Welcome to our Lectio Divina podcast for Palm Sunday, also known as Passion Sunday. In reading the Gospel passage according to the Lectio way, we're invited to enter into a real conversation with the passage through our life experience. In this way, we discover that what God did in the past, He is doing today, He is always doing. The sacred text reassures us of God's loving presence today, and at the same time calls us to grow, to enter even more fully into His work. We'll take a moment now to quieten our minds and hearts so as to come into the presence of God's living Word. The Gospel reading for Palm Sunday Mass is the entire story of the Passion according to Mark. I suggest for the purposes of our meditation this week that we confine ourselves to the very last section of that Gospel, Mark chapter 15, verses 33 to 45. When the 6th hour came, there was darkness over the whole land until the 9th hour. And at the 9th hour Jesus cried out in a loud voice, "Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani," which means, my God, why have you deserted me?" When some of those who stood by heard this, they said, "Listen, he's calling on Elijah." Someone ran and soaked a sponge in vinegar and, putting it on a reed, gave it to him to drink, saying, "Wait and see if Elijah will come to take him down." But Jesus gave a loud cry and breathed his last. And the veil of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom. The centurion who was standing in front of him had seen how he died, and he said, "In truth, this man was a son of God." There were some women watching from a distance. Among them were Mary of Magdala, Mary who was the mother of James the Younger, and Joseph and Salome. These used to follow him and look after him when he was in Galilee. And there were many other women who had come up to Jerusalem with him. So what happened back then? Deserted by his male disciples, taunted by his enemies, derided by those who hung with him on the cross, Jesus cried out, my God, why have you deserted me?" These were the opening lines from Psalm 22. In other words, Jesus crying out, "I can't see you, God. I can't feel your presence. Where are you?" Jesus went into a dark and desolate place, and he breathed his last. On that cross, he identified with human beings, even in the darkest and lowest moments of life. Witnessing his courage, humility, and dignity, the centurion recognized God's love in him. One way of entering into this passage is to remember the times when a deep darkness came over our lives from the 6th to the 9th hour, occasioned by loss, tragedy, violence, or affliction. The frightening darkness of depression, loneliness, helplessness, even despair. A time when you cried out, my God, where are you? I can't see you. I can't feel your presence. I feel abandoned, lost, utterly alone. In terrible pain, confusion, and loneliness, you gave a loud cry. You felt you could take it no more, that you were finished, that it was over. Remember the centurion, someone who saw something of the presence of God in you, even in that moment of sheer vulnerability. Saw the presence of God in your courageous humanity, even when you couldn't see it or feel it yourself. Remember too the faithful women who were always there, who never gave up on you, who never stopped believing in you, never stopped trusting in you, who were with you at the lowest times. Their love would never waver. Looking back now, perhaps you can identify with the detail of the veil of the temple being torn in two. The tearing up of an old image of God as someone outside of human suffering. And the emergence of God in Jesus, who understands the lowest places, the darkest places of humanity. God is someone who has been there and wants us to know that He's there with us now. Let the experience of meditation continue in the coming days as you go on your way, as you go about your ordinary, everyday life activities. Keep your eyes and ears open to what's going on around you, what's going on in the wider world, what you see in the papers, what you read in social media, and you may well be surprised to find the gospel passage living again in all kinds of new situations. When the time is right for you, you may just feel to pray in your own words, thanking the Father for the gift of this passage. Recall for the Father your experience of darkness, of feeling God's absence, the desolation, loneliness, despair. Remember too in prayer the life-giving words of the centurion and the faithfulness of the women. Remember how the veil of the temple was torn in two for you. Give thanks for the love of Jesus, the one who went into that dark, dark place and has given you hope. Trusting in the Father's love, let him know your sorrow or regret for the times that you knew others were in such a place of darkness, and yet, like so many of Jesus' friends, you weren't there for them in the way you'd like to have been. In your own time, you may feel to pray a prayer of petition for those who are experiencing darkness over the whole land at this time because of loss, tragedy, violence, or pandemic. Ask the Father to send them faithful people like the women who understand, who are brave enough to draw near, reassuring them that they're not alone, that your Son Jesus has been in that place and that you have raised him up. With a trusting heart, let the presence of God our Father now take over and draw you into a deeper prayer of silence and stillness. No need to say anything. No need to do anything. Let go and let God's loving presence hold you, carry you, breathe on you. In the event of distraction, perhaps you might choose a word or phrase from the passage. For example, the phrase, Son of God, and repeat it in the quiet of your heart to assist you on this journey into silence. Simply rest your heart receptively in the presence of God and know that you are beloved. Stay with this deep prayer for as long as it is given to you. May you experience the closeness of God in your life journey as you meditate on the way.